Hello, everybody. Vivek Patel here from Meaningful Ideas and Gentle Parents Unite. And I'm just putting the phone into my tripod. And welcome to my live tonight. I'm happy to be here with you. I just decided, kind of spur of the moment, in the last day or so, that I wanted to go live and talk about how to talk about difficult subjects with our kids. Thank you for a moment as I'm just setting up. How to talk about difficult subjects with our kids, because these are difficult times, right? And it can be very challenging to talk about the world with our kids, to talk about war and politics and oppression and all the stuff that's happening in the world. Whatever your viewpoint is, whatever your political viewpoint is, whatever your opinions about things are, you want to talk to your kids in a way that makes sense, that empowers them, that connects your relationship, that helps them feel safe, that helps them have a sense of some understanding of what's happening. And so I want to share some ideas with you. This is going to take about an hour and a half. I'm going to share some ideas with you on how to do that, how to think about it, what to do inside of ourselves, and that kind of thing. I think I want to mention off the bat that I'm not saying this in any professional capacity. I'm not telling you what you should do. What really you should do is trust your gut and your knowledge about your own family and do what they think is right. What I'm sharing is how I think about things. I've been working with parents and families for many years. I've been working with kids in many different capacities for many years. And so I have learned a lot over the few decades that I've been doing this work, and I want to share with you some of that. It might be a good idea to have some notes, some paper or pens or whatever, and have some notes to keep track of what I say, because it's going to be a lot. So let's start. First of all, when we want to talk to our kids about stuff, one of the most important things for us is to be aware of our own feelings. By the way, every now and then I'm looking down because I've got my notes, and I make my notes out just so to make sure that I cover everything I want to say. So working with our own feelings is always step one. Now, this is true when I'm talking about how to talk about difficult things with our kids. This is true when I'm talking about how to work with limits, or how to have conversations, or how to learn to play, or how to deal with homework or hygiene, or whatever it is. Whatever it is that we're doing, whatever work we're doing with our kids, always I start with our feelings, our thoughts and feelings, and it's more than just feelings, though. It's our lens, our perceptions, how we see the world, and then having an understanding of why. And once we start to do that work, we really start to know ourselves and to feel into our own experience. We're much more grounded and have much clearer capacity to guide our kids. Right? For me, I think being a guide to our kids is a very important part of our relationship. Our kids depend on us in many ways for emotional safety, for access to resources, and to guide them in learning about the world in many ways. Of course, they have lots to teach us, which is a beautiful thing. And that, having a relationship where our kids feel like they're contributing as much, and they're also we're safe to learn from and learn with. That's so important, right? So much of the work that we do as conscious parents is trying to form that relationship. So starting with our feelings is number one for that reason, right? Because the more that we are able to be aware of ourselves, the more we're able to be functional guides for our kids. But sometimes when our kids, when it's like a difficult topic, or for many other reasons, sometimes what can happen is we can be like a deer caught in the headlights around certain subjects, and really it's hard to talk to our kids. This is when we have to face, we don't have to. Sometimes I catch myself saying you have to. You don't have to. There's nothing you have to do. But here are some ideas about what could be helpful. So one is to really notice and face our discomfort. And this can be hard, being able to be comfortably uncomfortable, right? I also call it being comfortably wrong. But in this case, it's comfortably uncomfortable. To be able to sit with our discomfort and to really feel into it, because so often it's our own discomfort. It makes us hesitate, and then we regret it later on. Now, of course, that's different than making the decision that you want to wait for the right moment, because we're actually going to talk about finding the right moment. That's different. But the fear, now it's not that there's a problem with the fear and the discomfort. That's not a problem. So here's the thing, right? What we want to do is we want to notice our feelings. Now I'm talking about the discomfort about talking to your kid about a specific subject, right? And we don't want to let that discomfort hold us back. And so the first thing to do is to notice those feelings, right? And then to name them. And it's okay to name them. You don't have to bring shame and blame into it. And in fact, the workshop that I did just yesterday, was it just yesterday? Day before yesterday. The workshop that I did day before yesterday was on how to work through mistakes and learn from mistakes in a really deep way, where we get rid of the shame, we get rid of the blame, but we really feel it deeply and we think through it very deeply. So in this case, what we want to do is feel our feelings and notice our feelings, right? What are you really feeling about this? Now, there's two parts of it. One is, what are we feeling about the issue itself, right? What are we feeling about what's happening in Ukraine? What are you feeling about COVID? What are you feeling about government this and this protest and this issue? Like, there's many issues. What are you feeling about it? What are your values around it? You know, and are they evolving? Are you learning? Are you stretching? Are you growing? Are you thinking? Are you feeling deeply? Because if we want to guide our kids to be learning, growing, thinking creatures who really feel into their own values and live a conscious life, we want to do some of that ourselves. So one of the things about that is whether you're feeling, well, so that's the first thing, is the kind of feelings we have around the topic, but then there's the kind of feelings that we have around talking to our kids, which is a whole different kind of fear, a whole different kind of hesitation, and a whole different set of values. I mean, maybe they're not really different, but it's definitely worth thinking about both, right? Because and I'll tell you from personal experience, the hesitation and the regret go hand in hand. There are some things that I know my own discomfort with the issue caused me to not talk to my kid about. And there's some gaps. There's what I feel like there's some gaps in the guidance that I offered her because of my own hesitations. And I'm really, and I still feel it in me, and I fight through it all the time. You know, I work through it, and I fight through it all the time. So like it's work, right? Being like consciously engaged in this kind of stuff is work. So let's go on. So then once you notice your feelings, then you really want to empathize with them. You don't want to judge yourself for your own feelings, right? No, that's not going to help. You want to really empathize with them, hold space for your own feelings. You're feeling sad, you're feeling angry, you're feeling whatever you're feeling, really hold space for it. Oh, it's a shirt. I was wondering what that was. And then, so really hold space for your own feelings, you know, just like you would if your kid came to you with the feeling, said, I'm angry. Yeah, I hear that you're angry, kiddo. It's all right. So you can say that to yourself. I really, really feel it's okay for you to be angry. It's okay for you to be confused or scared or unsure or powerless, you know. All of these things are okay. The thing is, we want to feel those feelings so that we really they're not repressed, we're not criticizing ourselves for them, and we don't want to project them onto our kids. And this is a big thing, because when we're going into a sensitive conversation with them and we want to guide them, we want to be aware of our feelings, and of course, to a certain degree, we want to share our feelings with them, and I'm going to talk about how to do that and how to think about it in a bit. But we want to share our feelings with them to a certain degree, but we want to do it carefully. You want to do it in a way that empowers them, doesn't burden them, right? So part of that is what I call no repression, no projection. No repression, we don't want to repress our feelings because then they always leak out. But no projection means we also work with them consciously so they're not leaking out. So we're not projecting them onto our kids. So we're not giving them the burden of our feelings. But not by repressing. Now, some repression, we're going to talk about some intelligent repression. No, actually, that was from the workshop I did on Saturday. But we talk about intelligent repression. Sometimes in the moment you need to do some repressing, right? Like if suddenly you're talking to your kid and a big fear wave washes over you, you want to do a certain amount of modulating how much of that your kid sees and feels. You can say, I feel fear too. I just felt some right now. You know, it's normal to feel that. And so I revealed the fear and with like real feeling in my voice, but not in a way that the kid is like, oh, so now they're not available for me to lean on because they're in their own fear. That's the difference. So that's why facing our own discomfort and feeling our feelings and working with them consciously is so important, right? It's so important because what happens is we put things in the right place where we're not ignoring, and we're also not projecting. No repression, no projection. So, and then also once we understand a little bit about how we feel about something, then when we get into the conversation, and when we don't know, like I said, confusion is a part of it too, right? Knowing what you don't know. Then when you get into the conversation with your kid, you're much more aware. You're much more, you're not going to be stumbling over what you're going to say, right? You might do some stumbling. I'm not saying you should never stumble. See how I watch for my own judgment? I don't want to judge. I don't want to create judgment in the other person because stumbling is normal. Actually, one of the things I'm going to talk about just now coming up is admitting to your kid, acknowledging to your kid, not admitting, but acknowledging to your kid that that it is an awkward thing and a challenging thing to talk about, you know? I think that's important. All right. So we work with our feelings so we don't projecting them on our kid. And then, okay, so let's move on. So then as far as talking to our kids about it, I'm going to talk about a few different things to keep in mind. Now, I'm not going to really give you any scripts. That's not what this is about. I'm not going to really give you any scripts. I'm not going to tell you what to do. These are just different ways of thinking about things. This is why I suggest taking some notes. This is a way of thinking about things so that you can make decisions for yourself what feels right. Because if you use fake words, it doesn't make sense, right? You want to use your own words. But I put a lot of time into like thinking about things and thinking about like how to think about things so that if you use some of that framework, it can really help you in making your own decisions around stuff. So that's what I offer you, a framework. So the next one is to recognize each child is different. Each person is different. Each child is different. At birth, each child is different. And if you've had more than one kid, you know this, or if you work with kids at all, you know this. But kids are very different. Each one of us is different. There's something about us that's similar in different ways, depending on how broadly or narrowly you look. But there's something about each of us that's different. Now, specifically with our kids, being able to really tune into who is this person that's in front of me? What are their sensitivities? What's their temperament? What's their experience? What do they like to focus on? Or how does their mind work? How do they process information? How sensitive are they emotionally to other people's pain, perhaps, or to injustice, perhaps? What are their values? Like really keeping in mind the person that you're talking to. And it can reduce our fear, the fear that we have too, because I'm like, okay, wait, this is a person I'm talking to, right? And we can forget that when we're trying to keep our kids safe and we're trying to talk to them about something in just the right way. We can forget, this is a person. And also at different ages, kids have a different way. And I don't mean like all 3-year-olds are like this, but like the one kid, as they develop through their ages, will have different ways of processing things, different ways of contextualizing things. Certainly the same kid at 4 and the same kid at 6 and 8 and 10 and 14, like they're very different consciousnesses that you're working with, right? So where is your kid at, and really tuning into them in preparation for talking to them. How are you going to talk to them? How are you going to share with them? Maybe you're midstream already. Like probably for most of us, we're midstream somehow talking about this stuff with them that's happening in the world because you can't really avoid it. So this is also stuff that you can use for refinement, right? It's not only, I've never done this and now I'm going to do it. This is the kind of stuff that we can use for refinement. There's this martial artist I follow on Instagram, and one of the things that he said in one of his sword videos, which I really like, I'll have to look up his name, I forget at the moment. But one of the things that he said was, the first 1,000 hours is for mastery, and the next 10,000 hours is for refinement. And that's how I think about it, that no matter how proficient you get at something, whatever the art form is, whether it's dance or drawing or singing, or sculpting, or communication, or relationships, or parenting, whatever it is that you're doing, you can always be getting deeper at it, right? So this is how I think of it. So in the same sense, we can always be learning deeper about our kids, how they operate, how their minds operate, how their emotions, how their relationship with their emotions, and help them develop that too. So, because some kids need a slower, gentler approach, a lead in, looking for the right moment, that kind of thing. Some kids need you to sit them down and say, let's talk, let's have a family meeting. Some kids need the one-on-one. Some kids need a group conversation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of conversations that we can have coming up. And the reason I say that, by the way, is because I'm kind of reminding myself, because my mind goes in like tangents really quick. So sometimes I'm like, don't go into that right now, Vivek. It's literally in your notes later. You can bring it up later. It's just come up. Just go to it later. So that's why I say later on. I remind myself later on we're going to talk about the different kinds of conversations you can have and the different ways you can have conversations. All right. But also some kids need more space. Some kids need to be held closer. Like all different ways that kids need to be supported and experienced during the conversation. You need to really think about. And you might have 2 or 3 kids that are completely different and have different needs, and you need to give a little bit of what each one needs in order to get through it and to be a support to them, right? So the next thing is look for the right moment. And I actually said in my notes, look or cultivate the right moment. And look for or cultivate the right moment. And it's really both, kind of both. Cultivate, when I say cultivate, I mean create. There's a larger sense of cultivate where we create a relationship with our kids where they feel comfortable talking to us, where they feel comfortable being vulnerable with us. So this is the big cultivate, right? The big C, cultivate, which means, if you're like doing things regularly with your kids, the more traditional coercive parenting practices, which we try not to do here in this, in our community, but still, if you're doing those and it makes your kids pull away, then you might want to rethink some of those practices, right? Are your kids feeling hard done by you? Are they feeling like they have to look for ways around your control? Some of the time, those are things that they interfere in the cultivation of the flowing, trusting relationship that we want to create with our kids, which is why I do everything that I do, is to change to help people have information on how to work with our kids, to work with things with our kids, to explore life and values and relationship with our kids without using the hierarchical, coercive power over method. That's what we've always been doing all these years. And so for me, it's really important to always link that. It's always link that the meta way that we work with our kids is as important as the micro. Both the macro and the micro are equally important. So, but the other cultivate is when you're having conversations, right, about anything. Are you really inquisitive about their thoughts and their feelings? And when they do share their feelings, do they feel received by you, right? Do they feel like, oh, my parent's really hearing me, And are we enthusiastic about their thoughts and reflect on it? Like one of the ways that I help my kid feel my sincere receiving of their thoughts is when they share something with me. Doesn't matter what it is. I always bring it up a day or two later, and I think about it. I say, "Oh, I was thinking about when you told me this thing, and it really affected me. It made me think of this." And then I'll even say, sometimes when I work with parents now, I'm going to use that as an example, like this, and I'll say how it actually affected me. Right? So we're cultivating in our interactions. We're cultivating this feeling of comfort in having conversations. And then there's the smaller C, cultivate, where you start to talk, where you bring up stuff when you want to talk about a specific subject. So like maybe you want to talk about the Ukraine a little bit more, and so you might say something, I read an article about it, it was very interesting, it's got me thinking, and then you kind of leave it, and then maybe you share a meme about it. And then later on, you're typing a post and you're using voice to text. So typing a comment and you're using voice to text, and your kid overhears you, and so then in different ways you're dropping little little seeds that this is kind of in your in your field of vision, and then you can bring it up after time. So like I said. Sometimes you can do things to cultivate the right moment, and also you can say more general things like I want to make sure that we always have open lines of communication, which is really great, and so the different ways you can cultivate. Another thing is to think about thinking about the right moment is to think about bringing it up when you're feeling connected together. Don't bring it up at a time when there's some tension and angst. Deal with the relationship first. If there's some tension or separation or disconnection in your relationship, make sure you deal with that first. If there's something that you're kind of like struggling with, have a conversation about it. If you're having some kind of power struggle, see if you can resolve it. Because you don't want to go in with any kind of tension like that. So you want to make sure that you're bringing it up when you're connected and have some connecting experiences, conversations, interactions together, so that there's like a sense of connection between you. And it's kind of like being aware of, like for me, communication. I think a lot about communication, right? I've been studying communication for 30 years, for sure. At least 30 years. 1988 is when I really started thinking about it. And then 1990-91 is when I really, really started thinking about it. And it's just been a continuous thing since then. And one of the things is that the environment that we set when we're talking to someone is so important, when we're conversing is so important. We don't realize how many aspects of the environment affect the way a conversation goes. And so it's important to pay attention to that's why I talk about the lopsided tricycle. So this is something to write down, is the lopsided tricycle. Now, of course, we don't want the tricycle, I was going to say. We don't want the tricycle to be lopsided. We don't. We want it to drive evenly. So all three wheels need to be equally inflated. And these are the three wheels of human interactions. And the first wheel is the content, what we're talking about, what the issue is, what I said this, I did this, you said this, you did this. This is the situation. The second wheel, though, is the emotional experience each person is having. What's happening in our inner world, each one of us. And then the third is the relational experience. What's happening between us? What's the level of trust between us? What's the level of communication between us? What's the level of collaboration between us? Is there a power differential that we need to pay attention to? So there's the content, the emotional, and the relational. So when we pay attention to all three, things work a lot smoother, right? And so when you're working with your kids and you're talking with them about stuff, you want to make sure that you're not only paying attention to the content, but you're watching for the emotional shifts. You're watching for the relationship connection, and using all three. And then also the environment plays into it, of course. That is one of the big factors that plays into it as well. All right. So the other thing is, as you're thinking about when to bring it up, maybe you notice that your kid's emotional state has changed lately, and maybe you don't want to wait to casually bring it up, right? That's why I said before, sometimes you might feel a sense of concern, and it's okay to tell your kid that. The key to telling your kid about concern, and here's something that is really subtle. I don't know if it's really subtle, but I don't hear about a lot, and I think it's important. I don't want to say really subtle, then it sounds kind of elitist. I don't mean it that way, but like when I want to express a concern to a kid, I want to do it with the mindset very clearly that I see them as capable and struggling and wanting to help, which is different than seeing them as weak and incapable and struggling and needing my help. Because kids close up really quick. A lot of the time, they close up really quick if we think they're incapable. And actually, adults are like this too. Like I work with a lot of adults, parents, right, who are struggling with a lot of deep things. And when I talk to them, even when I'm like empathizing and I'm sharing and I'm holding space for their grief and sharing in their grief with them and whatever, in the back of my mind, I see them as capable. I see the power. I see the love. I see the wisdom. And I hold that clearly in my perception. And so, when I go to my kid and I say, I noticed that you've been tense lately, or I noticed that you've been really tired lately, or I noticed that your mood has changed, it's not like it's a problem and you need to be fixed. It's not that. And in my mind, I'm like, if that's what you need to do, it's like, yes, do it. Like, absolutely do it, right? So that, like, they feel that. Absolutely do it if that's what you need. And if you are struggling with something, I'm here for you, right? And if you are struggling with something, I'm here for you. Then there's nothing for the kid to pull away from then. then the kids open their hearts to us, But we have to be able to see that kind of judgment in ourselves first. Do you see your kid as incapable when they're struggling, or do you see them as capable and struggling? Right? And then we can help them tune into their own capacity, their own capability, right? And feel that sense of empowerment. And this is a whole different way. It is really, in some ways, it's a whole different way than the deficit model, which is you're broken and you need to be fixed. You have a deficit that we need to fill with knowledge, right? It's a different way of looking at it. All right. So cultivating the right moment, cultivating and looking for and waiting for the right moment. I say all three. Waiting for means don't rush. Cultivating means you can add to the process. And looking for means you're actively, in your mind, looking for moments. And I have a great example of this. Today, my kid... So I've been bringing up Ukraine with my kid every now and then, right? Because I want to keep the lines of communication open. And in preparing for this workshop, I was thinking, I'm not doing enough to keep those lines of communication open. Like, I could feel it, right? Because it's one of my areas of discomfort, So, like, I was like, okay, Vivek, you've got to reach out. And just as I was thinking that, she sent me this meme. And the meme says, I actually wrote it down in my notes here. It says, it has a picture of some funny picture. And then it says, 90s babies living through Y2K, 9/11, a plague, 2 economic recessions, and possible World War III before they hit 30. So she sent me this meme, and I sent a laugh emoji, and we kind of laughed about it. And I was like, that's my in. Just as I was looking for, and literally, as I was working on the cultivate the right moment, look for the right moment section, she sent me that meme. I kid you not. The world is not as random as we think it is. Maybe it was random, but I was literally working on this section as she sent me that meme. And I put the workshop away, right? And I was like typing, yeah, it's true. Wow, so much that you've been through in your life. It's amazing. You're 25 and all the things you've been through. These are historic times, aren't they? Yes, they are. It's amazing what's happening. How are you feeling about it these days? And then we ended up in a little bit of texting, right? A little bit of a text conversation. I actually swipe when I text, but I don't think anybody would know what I meant. If I did this, I don't know if anybody would know what I meant. This is what it is typing now. Goodness. But it was such a beautiful example, right? And but the thing is, right? So I noticed it because I'm looking for it. Partially I've been cultivating, but I have my eyes peeled. And so when the moment came, I was like, snap, right? What's one of the first things I did? I empathized with their feelings, right? Which I'm going to talk about just now. Empathize with their feelings, and then I asked questions. And then I shared some thoughts. So we're going to do both of those things right now. So first we're going to talk about the feelings, holding space for feelings. So when kids, when we do introduce it to the kids in many of the different ways that I talked about, I'm going to talk about asking questions in a little more detail just now, but bringing it up by asking them questions, or bringing it up slowly, or bringing it up at a family meeting, or bringing it up consciously. And I'm going to share a few other ways just now. Is to be able to really be able to hold space for their emotions, for their feelings, so they feel well received, right? Because if they feel well received, they're going to feel more comfortable next time to share them. And not only that, the experience of being received calms our nervous system. The experience of being received and understood helps us feel safe, helps us feel confidence in ourselves and in the person that we're with, right? So it's not only that they feel safe next time, it's that there's an actual impact that happens on the person and the relationship when they feel deeply received. So I'm going to briefly share with you my empathy system that I use and I share with parents. It's kind of like a script, but it's not really a script. So it's more of a system than a script. And of course, you don't have to stick to it. It's very flexible and fluid. But I have found that generally sticking to this structure seems to work really well. But I don't hold it very tightly. I'm not clutching it dearly, right? But it works for me, and so that's why I share it. That's pretty much what I do. So it's ears. It's called Use Your Ears. EARS stands for Empathize, affirm, relate, support. And you can find quite a long, in-depth article on my Facebook page. This Facebook page, Meaningful Ideas About Ears. If you type in empathy, or even if you type in ears, I think you'll find it. And I also did a video on my YouTube channel, which is also ears and empathy, and I did a few empathy videos worth looking at. So ears is empathize, affirm, relate, support. So here's how it works. Empathize first is to reflect back the other person's feelings. I hear that you're feeling upset and frightened right now. It makes perfect sense. That's the first part. You're feeling and if they explain why, I'm not sure what's going to happen. You're feeling like you're not sure what's going to happen, and so you're feeling confused. And I understand that. I'm really glad you shared that with me. You can express some appreciation for them sharing it. And then A is where you affirm what they're feeling, and this is really important. Affirm is, it's natural to feel that way. It's natural that you would feel that way. It's human. With all that's going on, of course you're going to have those kind of feelings. And mixed feelings too, kiddo. No wonder you have all these mixed feelings. It's natural. It's part of being human, right? Really letting people know that it's part of being human. It takes away the shame, takes away the embarrassment. That's why the A is so important. Empathize is you clarify you've heard their feelings. And some of the times when you empathize and clarify someone's feelings, they'll say, no, it's not exactly afraid. It's more like I'm nervous. And those subtle things, when as we grow in our emotional awareness, those word differences make a difference, right? So I'm like, great. They might say, it's not this I'm afraid of, it's really this I'm afraid of. I'm like, great, I'm really glad to know that. So this is what I'm hearing. Yes, that's more it. Thank you. I'm really glad to know that. Then you go to A. It's natural to feel that way, especially now that you explain it to me. I can see it's really natural to feel that way, kiddo. And lots of people feel that way these days too. It's hard, and so this is E and A. So a lot of the time when kids are expressing their feelings, you want to do EA, EEAA. You want to empathize, affirm, and then at a certain point, you relate. You bring in your own feelings into it. You bring your own experience into it. And you say, yeah, me too. I feel afraid at times like this too. Or these kind of things are hard for me too. Or that kind of thing makes me sad. When I hear that kind of news, I feel sad too. Or just the other day, I was struggling with something very similar to this, and I had that same kind of feeling. I was like, wow, I can't believe I have to go through this. This is so hard. And you can really bring yourself into it. Now, the reason R is third is because you don't want to do it too early. You don't want to do it and make it yourself the center. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to bring yourself into it to help them feel not alone. So first they feel heard, then they feel validated, that's the A, and then they feel not alone, that's the R. And the last one is support, which is really about how do you move forward, right? But S is the last one, and it often comes naturally from the experience of holding space and empathizing. So that's ears, EARS, empathize, affirm, relate, and support. I'm kind of skipping over support because we're going to talk more about that after as well. So other ways that you can hold space for feelings is some kids really need physical comfort. Some kids need space, but some kids need physical comfort when they have feelings. They want to be held. Like my kid is exactly 50-50 depending on the intensity of the emotions. There's a certain intensity, yes, certain intensity, no. And I just had to learn that over the years, But not just with my kid, with my partner too, with my mom too, the people that I'm close to. And I have more of a physical, affectionate relationship with. Tuning into each person's particular way is important. So with our kids, what really helps them feel comforted physically, it's good to have that in your mind. Oh yeah, I can also include a comfort, physical comfort. Sometimes with the feelings, they need to have a physical outlet, right? So maybe at that point you need to do something that really releases the energy. Working with the nervous system, so when we have an emotional dump in the nervous system, an emotional, amplified emotional experience, whether it's a single one or over time, once we're activated, once we're in a state of activation, there's a lot of energy. So there's two things that need to happen. One is to release the energy, and the other is to come back to center, right? So we need to get the energy out in some way, and then we need to bring ourselves back into a state where we're connected to ourselves again. So releasing the energy can be done in many ways. Rough and tumble play, going out to the park, going for a walk, compression can really help, massage, shaking, yoga, stretching, some kind of competitive play, perhaps jumping up and down. There's lots of different ways to release the energy physically. Sounding is another way, singing, laughing, crying. There's lots of physical ways to release that energy. Physical, emotional, you can release it emotionally, just letting the emotions out, in your feelings, in your emotions, in your movement, in your sound. And then at a certain point, we want to relax and come back to center, right? Then we want to do something that nourishes the nervous system. And this is something that we can really help our kids with, is helping them, number one, learn to release their feelings, to feel them and to release them. As I said before, to name them, feel them, release them, and also then to nourish our nervous system back to center. So sometimes, like I said before, kids need some rough play. Going to the park can be fun. Doing something that's fun can be really helpful. Once you've had a heavy time, and going for a walk, and like I said, yoga, stretching. Partner stretching can be really fun with kids, and different kinds of breathing as well. So there's lots of different things that you can do, not to repress the feelings so much as to, because expressing the feelings and releasing the energy is part of what we're doing, right? We're empathizing with our kids so that they hold space for their feelings. They have a chance to really feel them with us. Then there's a physical outlet and an emotional release if they need it. Then we help them find their way back to their center, right? And these are the kind of tools that we can help them with. I'm going to talk a little bit about mindfulness later too. That these are the kind of tools we can help them develop for themselves as well. Okay, so the next thing is, now these things are kind of in an order, but kind of not in an order. When I do my notes, I'll show you. When I do my notes, I've got the headings and the subheadings, and I kind of have a flow to it, but also there's a lot of stuff, so some of it just is here and some of it is there. But I want to move from section to section because I want to make sure I get through everything. That's it. Okay, let me go on. So the next thing is asking questions. Asking questions is really, really a powerful way to work with kids. Now, some kids don't like questions. Some kids feel a lot of pressure from questions. This isn't for every kid. We can also learn to ask questions in ways that are easier for kids to take. Like some kids feel a lot of pressure, and maybe they feel pressure to perform. Maybe they feel pressure to get it right. Maybe they think they need to be answering in a particular way. A lot of the time, kids just don't have words for what they're feeling or what they're thinking about things. And when they say, I don't know, it doesn't mean they don't know. It means I don't know how to tell you, right? I don't know how to express it to you. So asking questions, one is to find out how they think and what they feel and how they feel about a particular thing. And it's good to, rather than telling them how they should feel or guessing too much how they feel, unless, that they need some prodding, but still, I shouldn't say rather than. Another tool in the toolbox is asking questions. I don't like, even when I say rather than, it makes me stop and I'm like, no, sometimes it is useful to say to someone, you seem angry right now. Are you angry? Yes, I'm angry. No, I'm not angry. I'm frustrated. I'm so glad to know that. Like, that's so useful. Some people just appreciate you just open the door so you can at least clarify and think about it and be in that feeling. But sometimes someone just wants to say, how are you feeling right now about this, right? And so like when my kid sent me that meme today, that's what I sent her back. I said, oh, how are you feeling about this? And so that's another one. Another thing about asking questions is it encourages them thinking about their own opinions about things, their own values around things. It encourages them to think critically about things, We live in a world where people often will see a meme and just believe it, and then their whole identity and opinion is formed on that. Or they have an opinion already based on their past, and then it's really hard to think clearly through all of the different information and media that we get. And then the people who trust one source of media tell you that every other source of media is not trustable except the one that they get their information from. So how do we sort through all that? And how do you align all of that with your values? Like that's a worthwhile thing to explore with your kid as you're talking about critical issues, deep issues. Is not only is not only to talk about it, but like, how do you think about it, and how do you think about how to think about it, and what are your values around it, and really exploring that kind of stuff can be really deep. So then also we want to remember the lopsided tricycle. When we're asking questions, we want to ask questions about the content, but also about the feelings, and also about how they're feeling, right? How are you feeling? But also about the relationship, right? You want to ask about their relationships with you as well, but also with other people. You want to ask about how their life is going, and you want to also ask about the content, what they think about it. So remember to have both the thinking and feeling aspects of the questions. And then as you're asking questions, then you want to also cycle back to being aware of your own feelings. Because as you're asking, as you're engaging, maybe some of the things your kids will say will activate something in you. Maybe you won't agree with something they say. Or maybe you'll think, oh, it's too simplistic. Or maybe they have a value slightly different than yours. Who knows? It could be any number of things. And then you get defensive, right? So you really want to be aware of your own feelings during the conversation. Be aware of your own biases. Maybe you have biases. I mean, for sure you have biases. I do. I've been actively working with my biases for 30 years. I still have lots of biases. So being aware of your biases means you won't project them on your kid as well. And the other thing about asking questions is you can also imagine solutions together, right? What would it be like if, what could we do, or what could be done, or what would it be like if there was a solution and everything came, was solved? What would it be? What would it look like? What would you like the world to look like? And you can do some imagining like that and help kids think about different things creatively. And you can also do some thinking about, and this is also the thing, like researching what you don't know, and knowing when to research what you don't know, I think is important too. Learning a little bit about what's happening to people in different parts of the world and how it is. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about, that's coming up to, how much to share and what to share with our kids. And so we're going to talk about that just now. So other ways of working with the nervous system with our kids on helping nourish their nervous system is which also is part of another thing that I want to talk about, which is about safety. Now, my colleague Sarah Moore of Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting, who I absolutely adore, and I think she's very, very wise and very, very loving, also did a video very much like this on her YouTube channel, which you should check out. And I'm going to post it in the comments after on Meaningful Ideas. You can check it out there. And one of the things that she talked about a lot was safety too. And I was already getting ready to talk about safety, but I was like, the more she talked about it, the more I was like, okay, this is really an important point. And it doesn't mean that we're always safe. Thinking about safety doesn't mean that we're always safe, because we can't always guarantee safety. What we can do is we can help our kids feel safe, right? Which is part of why helping kids calm the nervous system and not be in an activated state all the time is so helpful, especially if you're going through a challenging time, you're dealing with challenging things. So we want to create experiences with our kid where they feel a sense of intentional safety, right? Of course, we want to also be honest with them about what's happening. We're not talking to them about what's happening, but we want to do it in a way that where we can help them feel safe. So part of that, of course, is our inner work, where they feel us as a safe presence as we're doing it. Even if we don't know something, even if we can't, give them all the answers, we can still feel like a safe presence, and this is so important. We want to always balance being honest with them with caring for their feelings at the same time. And one of the things that I got from Sarah from her video today was even when we can't always guarantee their safety, we can tell them that whatever happens, we'll be together, we'll face it together, we'll deal with it together. And that together we can work at being safe, and we can work through whatever it is. And this is where relational safety comes in, this feeling of being together, of being able to have the foundation of that relationship, that we can deal with whatever comes together. It produces an amazing effect on children, and so this is why this is something to really help them feel. This is why it's good to build in times for connection if you can, like more so. That's another thing that Sarah said, was more so than normal. If you already do so, do more so. It's not time for just doing it in normal amounts. See if you can fit in an extra time. Do micro connections, which are really helpful. Micro connections means you don't need a whole hour. What you do is you take little moments and you bring extra connection to it. I teach a lot of micro practices because parenting is really challenging and it's really hard to get through the day. And we don't always have time to meditate and empathize and then do physical work and then mindfulness and then connection and then play and then emotional intelligence, and there's not time for everything, right? And especially if each one of those things takes a half hour exercise. So micro practices only happen and take one moment. And I teach a micro meditation, a micro self-compassion, a micro self-observation, a micro release, I even have one called a micro vengeance, which I'm going to do a workshop at some point on all the micro practices, and I'll talk about them in detail at that point because they're really super helpful. But in this case, it's a micro connection, right? So you find little times throughout the day to really connect with your kid. And you can using simple things like if they ask for a glass of water, you can use getting them a glass of water to be a moment of connection. You can say, sure, kiddo, I'll get you a glass of water. Or you can say, sure, kiddo, I'd love to get you a glass of water. Even just like getting this water, it makes me think about how much I love you. This is awesome. And you can do that, right? Or you can say, yeah, absolutely, come with me, because I love it if you come with me, and we'll make it like an adventure, just going to the sink. And then you can make it a little thing where you're together. So little micro connections throughout the day. It helps your kid learn to regulate more, right? It's not like deep breathing is very useful, and I even have it on my list of stuff that I'm talking about, is doing different kinds of breathing so kids can learn to breathe and regulate their nervous system. But breathing can also be used to repress. Breathing can also be used to hold in, like holding in their breath. It's like holding in the feelings and use the breath, blow out the candle. Well, those are good things. Those are good things as long as we're not teaching kids to repress. And then there's no clear line when it is and when it isn't. Someone asked me, when is it repression and when isn't? There's no clear line. You have to have the desire, the integrity, and then practice paying attention to which it is, But in general, we want to we want to create micro connections with our kids. That's the main thing, not for repressing, but to generally help them have a sense of regulation in their nervous system, safety in their nervous system. They know we're there. They know we're attending to them. They feel our presence, right? They feel it, and we're intentionally helping them feel it. I call it nervous system programming. Every interaction we have programs their nervous system in some way. Positive, neutral, not so positive. And so we can make conscious impacts, since the impact is happening anyway. Another thing that can really help with our kid is mindfulness. Mindfulness is great for everybody, and mindfulness can look different for each person. Mindfulness might be quiet music, it might be sitting still. For some people, it might be loud music and dancing around, getting in touch with the center again, right? Bringing our awareness, our consciousness, our relationship with ourself, our nervous system back in contact together, integrated together, right, with our nervous system. So there's different ways to connect with that sense of ourselves, right? There's also mindfulness stuff on YouTube. Lots of great kids mindfulness stuff on YouTube. I've often thought about making mindfulness things for young people, but I just haven't had a chance to do that. I have so much going on, and but there's lots of different ways. I had this one friend who's found out that their kid needed loud rock music to fall asleep. They were playing all sorts of soothing music, and it wasn't making them fall asleep. As soon as they put on Led Zeppelin or AC/DC or something, all of a sudden the kids fell asleep. So there's but tuning into what helps our kids. And then let me see if I'm saying this part later. No, okay. And then what you can do is, once you have all these different ways of helping kids regulate their nervous system, you can pass on that information to them in a way where it becomes self-sustaining for them. Now, if the kids are younger, they need more of our input to do these things and to work with them, and then they become their own habits as they go along. Kids are older, you really have to work with them depending on their temperament, like I mentioned before. All right. Another thing about talking to kids and tuning into the age that they are and the way that they think about things is to make sure that you're using language which really resonates with them. Language where they can understand the concepts. That you're not using words that are maybe bigger than what they understand. And if you use words, then help them find the context for it. To use comparisons to things that they know and are familiar with, maybe shows that they know, maybe toys, maybe actually their lived experience. If they go to school, you can often talk about school, if they play sports or they're interested in a particular video game. You can find so many different ways to get music, what music they like. You can find so many different ways that you can use things that they're interested in, use the way they understand and process things, to help them understand things that are happening in the world or whatever difficult subject. When I talk about difficult subjects, it's not only global things, but it's also things in your country, in your county, in your community, in your family, in your relationship, very personally. From the micro to the macro, these principles all apply. So using words and phrases in ways that make sense to them. And also being careful not to use alarming words. You want to use accurate words. You want to be honest. You want to use facts and feeling words, both, because we want our kids to be aware of what's happening and also the feelings at play. We want to use fact and feeling words, but not alarmist words, because we want to be able to process what's happening and work through it in a way that feels safe. All right. So we're coming close to the end. Like I said, I'm not giving any scripts. These are all different ways to think about working with our kids, concepts that we can use, and hopefully even like if one or two of these concepts this sparks you and is like, oh, I could use that to talk about this thing with my kid, and it can be so helpful. It can set you on a path where you're like moving forward with more momentum, and that's really what's helpful about this. I'm also doing this kind of for myself. Because like I said, I often hesitate out of fear to talk to my kid. And I know there's sometimes I regret it. And right now I'm not regretting it because I can feel myself. I've got my hand on my back and I'm pushing myself a little bit. Send the text, Vivek. Send the text. I even specifically texted the words today, I want to keep the lines of communication open between us. I'm just going to be explicit. It's awkward. I'm just going to be explicit about it. And I might as well say that now. I know I have it written somewhere it's coming up, but I'm just going to say it now. Now, one of the things about talking with these things as our kids is to reveal our process with it as well. Like I said before, we want to reveal our process to share our humanity with them. Not to make them scared, but to share our humanity with them. But also, to help them know that this actually is a bit of a challenging, awkward topic for me to talk about, and so not because you want them to make you feel better about it. Even if you really want to watch for that, because there can be I do that to my kids. Sometimes I'll say, this is really hard for me, kiddo, because I want her to say, oh, Dad, I'm here for you and I'll make it easy for you, right? Don't worry about it. But then I'm telling her because I'm trying to get her to behave in a certain way. That never works out well. It really doesn't. It doesn't mean that she's not going to shift her behavior of knowing the information, but I don't want to say it trying to do that, because it always, it always adds like a manipulative edge to the thing. And then if whoever you're talking to doesn't want to, isn't willing, doesn't know how, isn't afraid to, doesn't have the capacity to, doesn't have the emotional capacity to, whatever it is, then they have to pull away from you, because they feel you asking for that. It's really challenging. So when we're with our kids, especially when we're with our kids, and when I acknowledge that this is awkward for me, I'm not trying to get something from them, I will actually want them to feel. First of all, I don't want them to misunderstand my hesitations, because I know kids often misunderstand. I shouldn't say kids. That's not right. People will often misunderstand our hesitations, and we process those hesitations based on our own filters. So if you hesitate with me, and I've done this before, if you hesitate with me, I might feel like you think I'm wrong, or you think I'm a problem, or you're judging me, or you're rejecting me in some way. And then I ask you later, you're like, no, I was thinking about my mother and how she yelled at me. And then I had to pause for a minute to gather myself. But in my head, I created this whole story around it, right? And of course, if the person had said, I'm just pausing for a moment because I had this thought about my mom, then I wouldn't have created that story. So like with our kids, I try and do that. I want to make sure that there's no story. So sometimes I'll say, I'm pausing a lot here because this is a little awkward for me because I myself don't know what I think about this. I have some thoughts about it and I have some clarity about my values, but I'm also in process, kiddo. We're in process together with this, right? And I think that's something that's really beautiful to be able to share with our kids. So sharing ourselves vulnerably is something really, really powerful that we can do. Okay, so the other thing is how much to share. How much do you share about something? So we already talked about this a little bit before, but I'm bringing it up again because it's something important to think about. Based on their age, based on what you think they might have heard or what media they have access to. Certainly I want kids to hear things from me rather than other people. And if they do hear things from other people, I want to be somebody that they process it with. I want them to be able to come to me and talk to me about it. And so, but the question of when to share, how much to get ahead of it so that they don't find out from someone else, or how much to not tell them knowing maybe they won't hear about it. And it's better if they don't hear about this much of this part of it. We each have to decide those things for ourselves. There's no magic answer for that. I cannot tell them this much and don't tell them this much. Each of us has to think about our own values and our own kids and what we want to share. I will say that because there are a lot of children that don't have a choice in having to face certain things, that it makes sense for us to let our kids know what's happening in the world to different kinds of people in different parts of the world. But certainly we can't tell them about every struggling issue of every country, of every person in the world, because we're all struggling in some way. There's so many people and there's so many cultures and there's so many, there's so much. So we have to pick and choose what makes sense, right? We have to. And there's many different aspects to that. Our mental health, their mental health. Like I said before, what are they going to hear elsewhere, and the context and the relationship that we have. So the more that we're clear about this, the easier it is for us to have an idea of what to share. We may get caught off guard. They heard about more than we even know, so now we have to get ahead of it, right? But still. And one of the things that really helps is for us to be clear about why we're sharing, our own intent about it. The more that we have a sense that I'm sharing to keep them informed, to keep them safe, to discuss values, to see if there's anything they want to do about it, if there's anything we can help them feel empowered. What are your reasons, right? Because we're in relationship and we want to hold it together. We want to hold the situation together, So, how much to share and why to share. Very important considerations. And I have no answers for that. This is the thing. I can't tell you what is right and wrong. I can tell you to think about it, to tune into your kid and to tune into yourself and to listen to your gut and to think about it. And notice your biases even as you're making that decision. And your fears. And then figure it out. Sorry, I can't tell you more. Kind of all of this is that, but some things I can tell you more specifically and some are less. All right, so now another thing is it's not just one conversation. This is the other thing. It's important. With life, with a lot of life things, whether you're talking about hygiene or relationships or communication or world events and war and viruses and or sex and relationship or school, don't think of it as one conversation. We used to say have the conversation, right? But our conversations are ongoing with our kids. So you want to bring it up now and then. You want to keep, like I said, you want to keep lines of communication open. You want both in the feeling of it and the practice of it. You want to keep the lines of communication open. It has to feel good. It has to feel safe. It has to feel trustworthy. And the kids aren't always going to make the first move, right? I know that when I make the effort to reach out to my kid around something, they feel so much more open. The little bits of working that I've been doing and pushing myself to talk about what's happening right now has made her send me that meme. And she felt so much more comfortable sending me that meme. And then I was able to follow up on that, and I feel so good about that, right? So, and really let them know that it can be awkward also to reach out for help. That they can be hesitant to reach out for help or to reach out for support, reach out to talk. Because even if you can say that to a kid and acknowledge that that's a thing, they can relax. They're like, oh yeah, it is awkward. Oh, and then they're like, yeah, and I want you to know there's no problem too big or too small to address with me. Really let your kid know that. There's no problem too big or too small. Your feelings are valid, and you always deserve help, and I'm always here for you, right? My kid's almost 25. I'm still, even just in text today, I'm always here for you, kiddo. I'll support you in any way I can. And so, like really letting them know that about our relationship, and that the conversation is ongoing. Maybe you talk about the content one day and the feelings the next day, right? Maybe a little bit of both. Maybe you drop in little bits of it. Maybe if something escalates or something changes, you might bring it up, knowing they might know something about it. It also might be that, if your kid is really young, that there's a very, like a 4 or 5-year-old, there's like a limited amount that they know about it and that you want them to know about it. But there's still a sense of, like, you can still help them prepare for the knowledge, talking about governments, talking about conflict, talking about humans and interactions. So like it can still be an ongoing exploration, even if they don't know that you're helping prepare them for knowing more, laying the groundwork for knowing more, right? So another thing is as we talked about meditation and breathing and empathizing with feelings. So one of the things with kids is to help them learn to check in with themselves, to be able to ask themselves, how am I feeling? Like, just a lot of kids don't even know they can ask themselves that question. How am I feeling? And then help them have some words for it, or help them have some expressions for it. It may not be words. Maybe your kid doesn't have the feeling words. Maybe it's movement. Maybe it's sound and expressions. Maybe it's art of some sort, There's lots of different ways to work with feelings. And then you help the kids learn to check in with themselves and ask that, and also to notice the signs when they are feeling stressed, and then you obviously are noticing it also, but they notice it, and then they're kind of learning about themselves, and then you can say, and you can come to me when you notice that, and then you can also help them have a plan for when they feel it, and these are the things that help you feel better, so the kids know themselves what feels better, having some kind of a wellness plan, and so kids can have a sense of that. And the other thing is the different kind of conversations that to have in different locations and different timings and different vibrations. You can talk in the car where you're looking straight forward. There's something about talking in the car that's a little bit different. You can talk while watching TV. You can talk over text. My kid and I talk regularly, but we text all the time, and you can have a conversation journal, which is kind of like texting, but with a journal where you pass it back and forth in writing. Some kids have, like, a little bit of that distance can be helpful for kids. A conversation journal can be helpful. You can play 20 questions. What do you think about this? And what about this? And what about this? And then the other person asks, a series of questions. And so that can be fun with no pressure, obviously. You can do word association games, which I find can be really fun, especially, in the right mood. Because word association game is kids you just say the first thing that comes to your mind. So you get like more of an unfiltered sense of how people are feeling and thinking about things. And then again, you can look up different ideas about how to have conversations with kids and how to approach things in the different locations, but like different, the more that we vary things, the more that we don't sit in patterns, the more we kind of open up the freedom to engage with our kids in different ways. So the last thing that I really want to talk about, which is really important, which is kind of the first thing that I talked about. The first thing that I talked about, if you remember, I say first you have to notice your feelings, face your biases, deal with your feelings, don't repress them, don't project them. That's the first thing I talked about. The last thing I talked about is kind of similar also about yourself, which is to take care of yourself, at least a little bit. And that's literally the title of this. It says, take care. Where is it? Take care of yourself, at least a little bit. And the reason I say at least a little bit is I know that it's hard, and I know we don't have time for it most of the time. And especially if you're like a single parent with 2 jobs and you barely get to see your kids and you barely get any time for anything, and then they won't sleep and they won't eat. and they won't do their homework and they won't brush their teeth. And through all of that, you're trying to be gentle and empathetic and kind and loving and collaborative with them. You're a hero. Let me tell you, you're a hero. So, I understand that there's like a lot of the time we don't have time to really take care of ourselves. And in your family unit, in your relationship with your kids, you are the engine, the fuel, and the armor for your kids. You know, it's a multi-layered, complex relationship, and it's a heavy role with a lot to it. Less so when we're just going about based on our patterns that our parents imposed upon us. But when we redefine parenting for ourselves, and when we move to a different paradigm, and we're parenting against our patterns to do things with our kids more consciously and respectfully than has been handed down to us, then when we do that work, we take on a lot of responsibility, and it's heavy. So we need some kind of replenishing, or the whole system suffers. Now, the whole system is going to suffer anyways, but whatever little replenishing you can take out of life is worth doing. And again, it's micro practices that can help with something like this. You know, and I talked about micro practices earlier, that when life is difficult, micro practices can mean a lot. So some of the things we can do, micro things that we can do are, well, I did one today where I was chewing and noticed that I wasn't paying any attention to my food as I was chewing. I was reading something. So I just took a moment and I took a breath, and I just really enjoyed that bite. I actually don't remember the bite before it or the bite after it. I remember that bite. And somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was telling me that they heard somebody talking about how when you don't pay attention to that bite, then the food is like a ghost. I really like that phrase. It helped me remember it. If anybody knows the source for that, you can put it in the comments. But things like that, or like the moment you step outside, let's say you're stepping outside to go for a walk. The moment you step outside, just take a half second to feel the sun on your face, you know, to take a breath and notice the difference between the inside air and the outside air. To use my micro meditation, which is a one breath meditation. You know, and one breath meditation is where you literally just take one conscious breath, and then you go on with whatever you were doing. Maybe we can do that together just now. Let's do a micro meditation together. So micro meditation, whatever you're doing. By the way, on my YouTube channel, which is Meaningful Ideas, I have a micro meditation video. You can find it. And I was literally washing the dishes. And as I was washing the dishes, I was feeling a little bit of stress. So I stopped and I felt the water running over my hands. And then I just took a breath. And I felt so much calmer and so much more relaxed. And I thought, hey, I should video this moment. So I called my kid. I said, hey, kid, bring your phone. And they came out with their phone and they videotaped. Listen to my age, right? And they recorded me on their phone. There's no tape. There is a video, but no tape. And then I put it up on my YouTube channel. So a micro meditation is just a one breath meditation. So let's do it together. I'm going to say breathe in, hold it, breathe out, hold it. And we'll do it all together. Okay, ready? Breathe in, hold it, breathe out, hold it. And then you go on about your day, right? You can do that when you're doing dishes. You're about to open a door. Just before you open the door, take a moment and take that breath. Feel the texture of the door handle. Notice it. How does it make you feel? What subtleties can you feel? Just take a moment to be present. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel gravity. Working with gravity. We're always working with gravity wherever we are. It's always around us. I'm also a dancer and a dance teacher. So now I'm starting to talk about... It's like all of a sudden I went into my dance teacher mode. You feel gravity. Feel it moving through your skeletal system. Feel the muscular system working to support you. Anyway. But it is kind of like that, right? Just taking a moment to really feel yourself. To notice yourself. Even just... the act of noticing yourself can bring you a certain replenishment, right? Micro replenishments throughout the day add up. We ignore all those moments. We don't use them as effectively. Of course, it's a struggle. So taking care of ourselves is a big deal when we're talking to our kids about hard things, right? Because then when they have their feelings about it, we have so much more capacity to hold space for those feelings. We have so much more capacity to hold space for our feelings. And then another thing that we're doing is we're modeling self-care when we do that. We're modeling caring for ourselves. We're modeling replenishing. We're modeling caring about our impact on the system, and that's why we do it. We're modeling emotional regulation. And then if we model out loud, like I'm really feeling, I noticed, like again with my kid, what I messaged her today. I said, I've noticed that the last time I went down rabbit holes with videos and news stories, and I really lost myself. This time I'm being a little bit more careful with how I do that, and that's something that's really important to me. And so I shared my process with my kid. Not really asking them for anything, but also seeking their response to it and their feeling about it. We went back and forth around that for a little while, and they told me that their process for it and the different ways that they're getting their information and how they're thinking about it and caring for their emotional needs. And that's really one of the things I wanted, was that when I shared mine, I wanted my kid to feel comfortable to share theirs. I didn't want them to feel the burden of me. I wanted them to feel connected to me and then want to share theirs. And that's what happened. And they shared theirs. And so we had this moment of sharing. And so then it's a modeling too, right? When we share our process with our kids, we model for them so that we're really empowering them to take those same things that we do, the same practices we do, and use it for themselves. All right, so let me go through a bit of a summary of what we talked about today, and then I'm going to close. Thank you so much, everyone who came and stayed through the whole thing, and for everyone who's watching later, thank you very much. I'll do a little closeout, but let me do the summary. So first of all, step one is working with your own feelings, feeling them, embracing them, acknowledging them, and not projecting them onto our kids, keeping centered. Recognizing each child is different and their different temperaments, and aligning what we do and how we approach them for their particular personality. Then we look for and cultivate the right moment. There's different ways to cultivate it by our interactions and, the environment and the things that we bring up and talk about it, and also looking for the right moment when they might bring it up in some way, or perhaps there's some change in them or something like that. And then we ask questions. Asking questions is really important. Of course, we want to share information. And a lot of what we want to do, though, is ask questions about how they're feeling, how they're thinking, about how to think about things. It's a really great way to engage with our kids, ask a lot of questions. When we do share our own feelings, we want to do it in a way that's honest and authentic, but isn't alarming to them and isn't a burden for them. We're doing it to help them and empower them. We want to hold space for their feelings using ears, which was empathize, affirm, relate, and support. Offering physical comfort, also helping them with regulating their nervous system with their emotions, using mindfulness and physical things, as well as connection and play, and things like that. Doing regular check-ins. It's not just one single conversation, but it's regular check-ins that we're going to do, and we're finding different ways to have the conversations in different locations in different ways so that it just becomes more of a part of life. Doing regular check-ins so that they don't have to be the ones to necessarily come to us. We want to reassure a feeling of safety and that we're in this together, and do things to help kids feel safe as much as possible, depending on the situation. We want to think about how much to share and take a lot of things into account with that. And we want to take care of ourselves as much as we can, because we're an important part of the system, and how we deal with ourselves is pivotal. So I hope this helps somewhat. Of course, like I said when I did the write-up for this, I don't have all the answers. I have some ideas that I share with you, and I really hope that they help. I decided recently that I'm going to do more of these public workshops like this. I'm going to do some paid ones as well, and I would love for you to support me in that if you would. But I'm going to be doing more workshops like this, like I talked about. I'll do one on the micro practices, which is really helpful, and there's a couple of other ones that I want to do, because I think at this time the more support folks can get for their parenting struggles, the better. So I really want to help that way. So I'm going to do a couple more of these. If you would like to donate to support my work, I'm going to put my PayPal link in the comments. I'll be very happy to take your money, but this is absolutely free. And I will be doing a paid workshop as well, and you can support me that way also. But I have tons and tons and tons of free content. I have my YouTube channel, which is Meaningful Ideas, which has almost 100 videos on it now. Facebook, Meaningful Ideas, has hundreds of articles and tons of videos. I go live all the time on Meaningful Ideas. On Instagram, I try and post regularly on Instagram, and Twitter these days I'm tweeting all the time. So I would love for you to join me on all those spaces. Meaningful Ideas on Facebook just reached 12,000 likes today. It's 13,000. I don't know the difference between follows and likes, but it just reached 12,000 likes today, and I'm so grateful to everyone for following. It really shows me how much passion there is for gentle parenting and conscious parenting, or what I call non-coercive collaborative parenting. It just makes me so happy. The Facebook group that I admin with my business partner and colleague and the founder of the group, Sujai Johnston, is Gentle Parents Unite. And you can find us, if you just type in Gentle Parents Unite in Facebook, you can find us. Our podcast, we host a podcast together, is also the Gentle Parents Unite podcast. I have a lot of information I put out there. I don't know how I have the time to do it. And if you want to work with me personally, I have a subscription group where Sujai and I host it. And we do regular calls, regular classes, regular meaning weekly, coaching calls all the time. And it's a beautiful community. And you can find us at gentleparentsunite.com. And that's it, everybody. Thank you so much. I love you and your family so much. I hope this helps. Please follow me everywhere. And I wish you all the best. And peace out.